Over the past year, I went from this to this. And I'm gonna show you my entire progression of learning to take people down. But in order to show that I was successful, not only do I have to take somebody down in a jiu-jitsu competition, but I also have to submit them with something other than an ankle lock. And you'll understand why in a second. But was this all worth it, or should I just keep pulling guard? Well, to find out, first I had to learn how to actually throw somebody. So I decided to start judo, but it was a bit harder than I expected, even with my previous jiu-jitsu experience. I was getting thrown all over the place, even by teenagers. I mean, I wasn't completely new to takedowns. 3 years ago when I first started competing, I tried them in competition, but they were just really bad, though I would get lucky from time to time. And sometimes even when I would take people down, I would resort to just falling back on an ankle lock, which works, but it's kind of moving backwards. Oftentimes I couldn't get much going, and I would even get taken down a lot myself. So I figured out a much more efficient way to get through matches was just to sit down and attack people's legs. And I could sometimes even do this in less than 20 seconds. And I've currently done over 80 of them. And this even shot me up to #1 in the world in my division. So guard pulling has to be legit, right? Because even some of the greats use it. But I was seeing all kinds of downsides. And maybe my guard just wasn't good enough, but I was sick of being smashed on bottom by bigger people. Even outside the sport, I saw some potential self-defense issues.
Get in my guard!
So I decided to make a change. I'm a guard puller, and my New Year's resolution is to not pull guard anymore in competitions. But just being able to throw somebody isn't enough. In jiu-jitsu, the goal isn't just control, it's also submissions. Sure, you can win by just taking somebody down and holding them there for the rest of the match, but the true spirit of jiu-jitsu is about finishing the fight. That's why my goal for this video isn't just to hit a takedown, it's also to submit from the top. I want to be a complete grappler, not only with a strong guard, but also with takedowns, passing, pinning, and submissions. But to make that happen after just one judo class, I had to put my skills to the test. All right, hit it. I'm about to spar at one of the biggest judo open mats I've ever seen. Can you show it? What I didn't realize though is I'm in one of the top US cities for judo, and they even send people to the Olympics from here. But why not give it a shot? So I asked a bunch of people to spar, not knowing what to expect. But some of them were pretty nice and even let me work my throws. And even though I felt like I knew a lot of the basic judo throws, I could only execute them if nobody was resisting, which kind of defeats the purpose.
You know, Josh doesn't have a lot of experience yet in judo, but the good thing, he knows how to take good falls.
And he was right. I definitely did know how to fall, although that's not really the compliment I was hoping to hear.
I think if you're my ass kicked by Nancy.
And my instincts were kind of off too. I kept getting foot swept because I was trying to use my Muay Thai stance for judo, which I didn't realize was completely backwards. The fix was simple, just switch my lead foot. But even with that adjustment, I knew I was barely scratching the surface. But I was determined. So I entered back-to-back jiu-jitsu competitions right after my first sparring, and results were pretty mixed. I did score some takedowns, but they were sloppy and risky. And I never actually managed to get a submission afterwards. So my goal had technically failed. I also couldn't finish a lot of takedowns, and I kept getting taken down myself, which was aggravating an old AC joint injury, which I had popped at a competition in Lisbon just a few months earlier. I realized I had a long way to go against anybody who actually knew what they were doing. I did still have the ankle lock in my back pocket though. I realized the learning curve was a lot steeper than I initially thought. So I slowed down and decided to treat judo as its own art, letting the lessons carry over naturally into jiu-jitsu.
Boy.
But my shoulder wasn't getting any better.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine.
Ignoring the pain, I decided to enter yet another jiu-jitsu competition. My teammates and coaches had warned me, but I thought as long as I didn't take any hard falls, I would be fine. In my first match, I got taken down, but I didn't hurt myself, and I still got the ankle lock. But that submission failed. And then in my second match, my opponent pulled guard, and everything I tried to do on top felt shaky, even though I won. And finally, in my last match of the day, I couldn't get anything going on my opponent. I even tried to bait him with a single leg so I could do a sumi gaeshi like I had done before, but that didn't go as planned. And then to make matters worse, in the last 5 seconds of the match, I dove right onto my shoulder. It turns out I had a grade 2 AC joint separation and I had no idea how long I was gonna be out. This was the longest time I had taken off in a couple years from competing. That hurts. But I knew that if I spent the time rehabbing, that I would come back stronger than ever. I was doing whatever I could, drilling foot sweeps, weightlifting, hitting the sauna and cold plunge, and I eventually could start throwing and taking falls again. It felt like it was taking forever, but finally just 2 short months later, I came back feeling even stronger than I did before the injury. But would I be able to accomplish my goal? Real quick, speaking of injuries and New Year's resolutions, my goal for next year is to build a stronger neck to prevent injuries. And I've had the iron neck for a while, which is super useful for that, but I want to use it more now. If you don't know, the iron neck is a device that helps you build neck strength. And there's a couple different versions of it at different price points. They're not sponsoring this video, but I do have a link in the description for 10% off your order. It's a great holiday gift idea, but just make sure that if you want it by Christmas, you order by the dates shown on the screen. All right, back to the video. But it turns out this injury was a blessing in disguise because during my time off, I learned about a new approach to training. I'd been competing so much over the last couple years and still didn't feel like I was as good as I should be. And what I found out is that I think I was just training the wrong way. So when I was 100%, I stopped drilling completely and only focused on live resistance training, and I began to have breakthroughs, like hitting my first ever foot sweep in sparring. It wasn't much, but I was finally beginning to see some actual changes in my stand-up game, although I still had a long way to go. My newaza was looking alright at judo practice, but of course I wanted to focus on the throws, so I started to get some inspiration from the Georgians. I realized I could start closing more distance and using underhooks and body locks, and this opened up some new throws for me. But when I got back to competing, I pretty much gave up on my original goal because not only was I nervous about getting injured again, but I also joined a new team this year and I was putting pressure on myself to win. I experimented with more sweeping, passing, and submitting, but it was kind of hit or miss. So I primarily stuck with my A game of guard pulling and ankle locking. And I was doing all right. So the question lingered, if I could have so much success in sport BJJ with the guard pulling strategy, why would I take 2 steps back and lose by trying new things? See, I think people who haven't competed don't quite have a grasp of all the tactics involved in competition. And many are overconfident in their ability to take down another competitor. The most common issue I see is people getting stuck in a grip fighting battle for 6 minutes straight and then losing to ref decision in their first match. So it really makes you question whether it's a good strategy to use or not, especially with how powerful guards can be nowadays. Is the 2 points from a takedown in an IBJJF competition really worth all that effort? Especially if you can get the same 2 points just by sitting down and sweeping somebody. I mean, I was still developing other parts of my game in competition, but I was not working any takedowns whatsoever. This became so obvious when I went back to Japan for a tournament I lost the previous year, this time submitting 3 of 4 of my opponents with the ankle lock. I was #1 in the world in 2 weight classes now heading into Birmingham, which would be my last tournament at blue belt, but this now meant that if I were to reignite my original goal, my opponents would be even tougher, and it didn't help that my first competition in purple belt would be the Master World Championship. This would be my 71st competition. Yeah, first competition at purple belt. If I was gonna have a shot at winning my first major at purple belt, I would need to refine my current game and go in with the strategy that I knew worked, especially since I was moving up a weight class. So of course I was gonna try to ankle lock people. But while I was able to win 1 match with the ankle lock, I immediately felt that it was gonna be way tougher as I moved up in the ranks. So once again, I went back to training stand-up. And I had just 3 weeks before I could try this again in another jiu-jitsu competition. So the challenge was on. I even tried a high school wrestling class because I started to understand the value of leg grabs thanks to judo. But I was constantly reminded of just how far I had to go. So I signed up for my first judo tournament and worked on attacking faster and pinning for longer. 2 things that judo actually improved about my BJJ. I was still getting thrown all over the place, but I was beginning to have way more success with my own throws. I also realized that the Sumi Gaeshi could be more than just a single leg takedown defense. I realized in my matches that my judo opponents were actually using a similar stance to my jiu-jitsu opponents with their stiff arms and hips back. This was almost perfect for the Sumi Gaeshi, and having this success in the judo competition reignited my confidence that maybe I could hit something in a jiu-jitsu competition. So I went back to the Atlanta Open for the 2nd time this year.
How do you think I'm going to do at middleweight? I'm going up like two weight classes.
2?
Yeah.
I think you're gonna do great.
Yeah,
Let's
these
go.
guys are huge though.
You
They're as
heard it
tall
here
as
first.
you.
Oh shit, I forgot you're doing middleweight. Technique over everything.
I'm gonna try to sumigashi.
Oh shit, let's go. The worst thing that could happen is you pull butterfly guard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was nervous about my first opponent, a bigger, stronger MMA fighter, and had no idea if I would actually be able to throw him. But when he gripped me, had his hips back, and started pushing into me, I knew it was the perfect time. I had done it, but this didn't count for my goal. I hadn't managed to actually submit him. In fact, I did the opposite. I stood back up and counted 3 seconds so that I could pull guard again and then sweep him for another 2 points. It was a strategy me and my coach had worked on. I was so tired that I ended up pulling guard in my second match and then I lost the final. I mean, I ended up getting second place, but it didn't feel like a victory even though I had executed on a throw. After another failure, I really had to question if this was even worth it. Afterwards, I competed in Sacramento where I won my first ever gold at a purple belt competition, but once again, there were no takedowns or submissions from the top. I got gold essentially by sweeping my opponent and stalling on top in the finals, and I wanted to do better than that.
Yes, finish it. 30 seconds.
Let's go, Josh. Let's go, Josh. Yep. Yep.
You gotta kill that connection.
Nice, Josh. Yep. 30 seconds. You're up by 1.
I mean, my performance didn't look bad, but I was playing a whole different type of game.
Good job, Josh.
And then something a bit unexpected happened. I traveled to Sweden to make a video with Jesse Enkamp where I displayed pretty bad stand-up and got destroyed in the comment section. But this only fueled me to double down on my training. And with the end of the year closing in, I knew I only had a few more opportunities left at my goal to take someone down and submit them in a competition. And I began to learn all kinds of new lessons. I began to realize that takedowns are easy. It's getting to them that's hard. I began focusing on creating openings rather than getting stuck in tug-of-wars or waiting for my opponents to make mistakes. We created training exercises to help us learn how to attack the upper body to get to the lower body and vice versa. And this started to have a real effect in sparring. And not only was I learning to attack the upper and lower body, but also learning to attack in multiple directions. Like if the hip throw failed, I could trip my partner the opposite way. This focus on takedowns really emphasized the other weak link in my chain, my passing, which also got a whole lot better. Because I had seen so much now in competition, if I was going to be in top position, especially after a takedown, I had to be able to get past their legs to hold them down and submit them. This would be my only shot at accomplishing my goal. Stand-up was now a part of almost every single training session, and 11 months in, I felt like a different grappler. The year was ending, but I still had one last opportunity to show myself that I could do it. My final gi tournament at the end of the year just had one other opponent in it. Best 2 out of 3, so I had at most 3 chances to make this work. I began shaking him and moving him around so I could create an opening to get to his leg.
Group fighting, group fighting.
Look at this takedown
Look at that, look at that.
Nice, Josh. Nice, Josh. Yeah, keep him in. Keep him in.
Oh, look at that.
I had taken him down, but I couldn't actually pass his guard to submit him, and I only had at most 2 chances left. I knew he was expecting a single leg this time, so I had to switch it up.
You go to an outside passing seminar. I never was outside pass. I did. I got the
The Sumigaeshi had actually felt effortless this time, but I couldn't bask in my glory. I needed to focus on getting past his guard so that I could get on top of him and have a chance at submitting him before time ran out. I worked my way cautiously to his back, trying my best to hold him down so that he couldn't reestablish his guard. I was moving slowly, but I could tell I was wearing him out. But I was really worried that he might escape my back control like he did in the last match. But I had secured the position. But looking at the clock, I saw I was running out of time, so I had to get moving. I grabbed his collar and tried to set up a choke. But as we fell back, he started escaping. I had actually done it. But it had taken so long and I faced so many obstacles, so it really makes you wonder, was this really all worth it? And if I had to do this all over again, which takedown art would I choose? So I just got back from Nogi Worlds last night, which was my first major Nogi tournament at Purple Belt, which I got 5 months ago, and it was also in my new weight class, which is middleweight. And this video that you're watching right now, I actually finished it a few days ago, but I wanted to hold off on publishing it first to see if I could actually hit some takedowns at Nogi Worlds. And I'm happy to report that I was successful, which makes for such a cooler ending to this video. So check these out.
Shake the head. Shake the head. Up, 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 up. Double back. Double unders, there you go. Get your points.
Now you might be thinking that this video was sort of a bait and switch since it focused so heavily on judo at the beginning, and what you just saw was technically wrestling. But the thing is, I went into this year thinking that judo would solve all of my BJJ takedown problems. But very quickly, it revealed to me the power of wrestling. And I found myself training at the judo dojo less and less and just designing my own takedown training for BJJ using the ecological approach. And this actually started working incredibly well. And it wasn't like judo disappeared altogether. Now, don't get me wrong, judo as a sport is incredibly fun. But the more I trained, the lines started to blur between all these different takedown arts, whether that was judo, wrestling, BJJ, sumo, or parkour MMA. You see, without the constraints of a sport rule set, who's to say what move is a judo move versus a wrestling move and vice versa? There really are only so many ways to take somebody down, and once you introduce things like submissions, everything changes again. But if I had to start over at the beginning of the year, I'd probably choose wrestling, but I don't know. And that's not because judo doesn't work, but rather because of how powerful leg grabs are in BJJ. But this journey wasn't about choosing one art over the other. It was really just about becoming a more complete grappler. And I really felt like that after this Nogi Worlds, literally my last competition of 2024. And just to be clear, I'm not gonna stop pulling guard. See, takedowns and guard pulling are just tools in the toolbox for a sport BJJ competition, and it just gives me strategic flexibility for each match. And it also gives me a degree of influence over my opponent's choices. Learning more on the feet also made me a better passer, and it also made me a safer training partner, especially through understanding things to avoid, no matter how small they are. For example, avoiding hanging onto your training partner for too long during a fall. And Jordan is great, by the way. This moment was just super cherry-picked to illustrate a point. Or avoiding sitting on your partner's knee during throws like a Tani Atoshi, like in this video that my friend Brandon sent me. And again, this wasn't to call anybody out, and thankfully Brandon was fine, but this was just another good lesson for everybody involved.
When you go to sit down, you're going to catch your opponent's knee.
And it turns out what I hit at Nogi Worlds was one of the safer Tani Atoshi alternatives. But despite everything I've learned, none of this is to say that I've mastered anything yet. I'm far from it. In order to get better at something, you really just have to start doing it and be willing to fail at it a lot, because by definition of being a beginner, you won't be the best when you start. Sometimes progressing means temporarily regressing. So I'm just gonna keep focusing on improving because every competition gives me something new to work on, whether that's a local competition or Nogi Worlds. This year was not only the year of stand-up, but also of YouTube, and it's all thanks to you.
I'm currently at 19,999. I don't know if you can see that. Oh!
All right, I recently hit 20K subscribers, tripling my audience after quitting my job about 6 months ago to go full-time as a YouTuber. So I want to sincerely say thank you to all of you who are watching, subscribing, liking the videos. I also greatly appreciate all of you who have joined the channel membership or the Patreon just to support the channel. It means a lot. Happy holidays, Happy New Year. Let me know your New Year's resolution in the comments.